you know, without any kind of due process, because that's what we did later on in the meeting last week, was go through the due process of, you know, vetting, questioning, and making a decision. Without due process, just come right out and accusing people of some stuff, because that's how I felt. I felt that you were accusing me and the other commissioners of blackballing and I guess, you know, stonewalling in a sense. So I'm not, I guess, please make me feel like that's wrong for some reason.
No, that's absolutely wrong. It's indicative of the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the powerful in the community, violated my child and my right to confidentiality. I followed all the appropriate pathways, nothing was done. I won 4 additional complaints at the state level, and I have been blackballed all along the way from actively getting change for the disabled individuals who are students in the community. I've connected with many parents over this issue, and I want to advocate. I want to show up for them. And that's what I was referencing, not you at all. It's the indicative of what lengths people are willing to go to make someone be silent and go away when they are in the trenches experiencing advocacy for the disabled.
So then it seems to me, and I don't want to prolong this longer than I need to, it seems to me like you would assume that those individuals reached out to us and then it influenced our decision.
Ms. Kaler said, I've had several people email me concerned.
But she never insinuated it was them.
There's 13,000 people in the city of Ottawa.
Well, I'm saying those at the superintendent level, why would there not be transparency? Why would we not be able to, why is that funny?
Well, because you said that you have no idea who even contacted me, and there's 13,000 people.
Do I, as an American citizen, have the right to free speech? Do I have the right? Do I have the right to not be retaliated against?
I
as a
don't know what
protected
has
individual?
happened to you, and I'm very sorry what has happened to you. But I mean, Mayor Crowley's right. I mean, you really jumped to a lot of conclusions there about things that this didn't have anything to do with us.
But when you ask the question, you're opening me up to be seen as some sort of villain when I am actually the victim of the system. And those powerful folks don't want me to have a voice to advocate for the disabled.
I guess my concern is I think we're intertwining 2 things here. We're intertwining that situation with this situation. And this situation, I mean, we did our due diligence. We did what we thought was right. I said,
can you explain due diligence?
We interviewed you. We had a discussion later on, and we made a decision. We made the decision to put you on the board. We didn't do what your insinuations, you know, were.
That was after you said to come re-interview.
No. That post was at 8:20 that night.
Yeah,
that's after the meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm curious, what do you think is the motivation of the people you're mentioning that are wanting to blackball you? What's their motivation?
I think reputation. I think silencing me. If any of you have a child who you as a parent, the law is designed so you are able to advocate for them. And when your rights and their right to a free and appropriate public education are violated repeatedly, it is your job as a parent to show up and to speak out and to support individuals in the community who are having the same thing happen. And I am an American citizen. We have the right to free speech. I'm a protected individual because I'm a whistleblower under the ADA, according to the Kansas State Department of Ed, and I cannot be retaliated against for winning those complaints and speaking about it. Both are in my rights to do so. There's nowhere a non-disparaging agreement that a parent signs when they win complaints with the Kansas State Department of Education. And I have the right to free speech as an American citizen.
I don't think anybody's ever questioned your right.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, if I would go back and watch it, I would almost guarantee it that nothing was brought up about free speech. Or did we at all at any point try to stifle your free speech?
Oh, if you're saying I can't say things on my own social media.
We did not say you couldn't say anything at all. You can say whatever you want.
Yes,
what
I
can. I don't appreciate is when the accusation, or it seemed like you were accusing me of being the kind of person that would blackball somebody.
No, I'm saying I've seen the links that the powerful at the school level are willing to go to silence someone. And I have not just one complaint once. It wasn't an accident. There are choices being made.
I guess I still don't understand what that has to do with the commission. Because you intertwined in that social media post this interview, our board application, and the powerful people in the community. This has nothing to do with the school
It
board
came from
right
the
here.
question related to people concerned about my involvement.
It
They
came
were,
from a question about your use of social media and the concern of that.
well, it was related to a post, right?
Sure.
Was that, because that's the only reason why someone would be reaching out, be concerned
No,
about my
I gotta
involvement.
take that back, because we have citizens that reach out to us every single day about a bunch of different things. It's never about just one thing. So that's not the only reason. I just heard you say that would be the only reason. No, I have people, Commissioner Skidmore has been here shortly after I joined, that contact us about a myriad of things. at
Well,
the
I'm
grocery
saying for the
store, so-
context here, is
Yeah.
that the question that you asked me was in relation to social media, and I responded. I mean, I didn't lie. I'm not ashamed. I am proud of the advocacy that I'm doing and have done, and the ways that I'm following my rights as well as the rights of other citizens with disabled children in advocating. So when I'm referencing the powerful people in the community, it's the individuals at the superintendent level who are attempting to silence me because they are afraid. They know that I am someone who shows up and advocates for people.
Well, I don't know how any of those individuals would have ever tried to blackball you, because neither of them have ever contacted me to try to make a decision on whether you should be appointed or not.
That's fine. The reference is then when it's this ambiguous, multiple people have contacted me, because that was the frame of the question.
We never discuss names. Commissioner Skidmore, have you ever brought up a name?
But I
Somebody
don't-
who's talked to you?
I don't know that. How do I know that? I
But
just,
we will never do that.
but when you said there's multiple people who are concerned,
That is
am I-
true. That is true.
that those individuals are protecting superintendents more than disabled children then.
I have a huge issue with the fact that you feel like that we are against individuals with a disability.
My
You
son
don't know
is an
the story.
individual with
And
disability.
I'm an individual with a disability.
And I
If
have-
you'd like to go there, we can go there.
I
But
have-
I'm not going to, because it's not necessary. This is about the Accessibility Advisory Board. And this is about making our community a better place. And it
And there's
really
two
is, and I
open spots,
recognize
and I
the
am
fact that-
very
if you could let me
passionate.
finish for a second? Thank you. I recognize you are super passionate, and I applaud that. I applaud that you are doing that. Everyone in this room has a passion, and when it is lit inside them, they show that, and I applaud what you're doing. But never at any point did we ever try and stifle your free speech. Never at any point did we try and do the things that you had actually posted that we had done.
And I said this is about superintendent level. This is not about, I never
I don't know
said.
how we're supposed to know that because it appeared as.
Well, I
as what-
convinced him. He
You
asked
didn't
me.
convince me, I promise.
Okay.
You didn't.
So
I
who
don't-
would like me to not speak out? Who would like
No,
me
here,
to?
nobody's saying you can't speak out.
Well,
Never
she
said
she
that.
said there's multiple people who are concerned about my involvement.
That person, those individuals never said you couldn't speak out. Again, I'm going to tell you one more time, no one has ever said you can't talk freely.
But then why
You
would I
certainly
not
can.
be a capable and an acceptable person for your board? Wouldn't you want someone who advocates for the disabled and who has a record of doing so?
Yeah, but I would also not want somebody on the board that spreads misinformation, and me being a blackballer is misinformation.
That
I
wasn't
promise
about you.
Yes, it was. I don't care what you say, yes, it was.
You don't care what I say.
You're exactly right, I don't.
Interesting.
Because the way your post says, you called us out as the powerful people in town that want to
Superintendent.
blackball people. That's not what it said. Why didn't you say superintendent then?
Because the powerful people in town are on these boards with you all.
So you're talking about us. You just said you weren't.
But they've received concerns.
Okay.
And I have the right against retaliation for winning those complaints.
So, okay.
We don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But you don't want me to speak about them.
We're not saying you can't speak at all. You know what? I brought you in for a second interview so you could speak about, your post and
But you
anything
don't
else.
believe me.
That's
So-
why, and I have that right.
Yes, but why did you bring me back unless you just wanted to grill me and embarrass me?
I'm not embarrassing you. I wanted to know, and I can't reach out to you. So we brought you back in just like we did before, and we questioned you.
Okay, so
There should be no reason that you should be embarrassed. It's a post that you put on social media for everybody to read.
I'm not embarrassed. What I'm
Okay,
saying
so
is,
then I didn't embarrass you.
I'm saying though, this feels like some sort of interrogation.
Okay, it's
didn't
an
do any-
interview.
I
It's an
didn't do
interview.
anything wrong.
It's an interview. Okay. Well, commissioners, do we have any other questions for Mrs. Ham? Okay.
Do you also feel like I shouldn't volunteer for the rec commission?
I think that may be a question for down the board. I don't,
I'd say that's a rec commission
yeah,
decision.
that's a rec commission thing. That has nothing to do with us. So you can certainly volunteer for that board and they can make their own decision, just like,
No, I just
Yeah.
mean as a coach for the rec commission.
once again, that has nothing to do with me. So you can certainly make your own decisions. Adding somebody to the accessibility board does have something to do with me. So I have an opinion about that. So. If no other questions, Mrs. Sam, we appreciate your time. We will have a conversation later on about 2 boards, including accessibility board, and we'll let you know. That'll move us on to items to be placed on the regular city commission agenda, which is our minutes from our April 20th, regular meeting. And then we have a proclamation.
Sorry on that, I did have a note on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the initial paragraph, I'm not on the present and participating. And then I was like, I was there, so.
Give it some credit, Mrs. Reed.
Our participation point.
Golly.
Are you sure?
Well, I seconded a motion, so hopefully I was.
There you go. Good, good. Item 2 is the proclamation recognizing May 2022 as Community Action Week, Action Month, and then item 3 is proclamation recognizing May 11th through the 17th of 2022 as Police Week. Commissioners, have you had, outside of Zach, who we know obviously went over it all, does anybody else have any changes? Okay, if not, is everybody okay with putting that on our agenda for Wednesday?
Yep.
Sounds good. Moves us on to item 1, which is our continued discussion of additional sale of lakeside lots.
And you all have your own map, your own personal map.
That it looks like you wrote on, which I'm gonna ask you to sign later.
So brief overview after last week, I think we kind of were in a consensus of maybe 11, 12, and 13, 10 holding off maybe down the road. We asked for a little bit of information on stormwater. Were we able to get any kind of update,
Not yet.
anything on that?
Not yet.
What?
Okay.
You're kidding.
A whole week ago.
I mean, maybe this next few days if it rains enough.
Yeah, we'll know for sure.
We'll all show up.
I'll bring the
Yeah, that's
videos.
just fine.
Yeah.
We've appointed the mayor as
On which side?
neighborhood.
Neighborhood stormwater rep.
monitor.
Good, good.
Deal a little boat.
We have a kayak. We actually
If
do.
one commissioner can vote to the mayor's house, then we know that there's a stormwater issue.
Yep,
That's
yep.
true.
Mhm.
There we go. Commissioners, do you have any other questions, updates, any other thing that you want to know? And if not, anybody have any idea of if or how they would like to move forward?
I was gonna say, I did watch the discussion on this last week, and yeah, I agree. I mean, at one point I thought 10, 11, 12, 13, but if we want to wait on 10 for just more time, more information, we can always bring it up and sell it later. It's not like this is the end of the game, so.
Well, and like we discussed, 12 and 13 can be combined, possibly even 11 and 12. There's the electric utility easement there, but those can be vacated if, through a process. 10 and 11 most likely couldn't be combined. There's a drainage easement there. So, I mean, that'd be more difficult to vacate.
I think it's a good next step in this process. And I think we need to remember that the sale from these lots does go into our park fund, which will help us actually fund the park improvements that are gonna happen on the other side of the road. So,
I like that idea. I think if we do it the same way we did last time, just have our city attorney take bids.
So that's what I was gonna say. Maybe we can check some stuff off here. Is everybody okay with 11, 12, and 13, putting them up for sale?
Yes.
Okay, so we got that out of the way. So now that's what I was gonna say. The next discussion is how do we want to proceed? Commissioner Kaler mentioned last week about maybe a sealed bid because of the availability. I'd like to say that the auction, worked well too. So, I mean, let's have that discussion on how we'd like to proceed on the sale of the lots.
I guess from my point of view, I don't think I see, I think individuals, when we started having the sale from the land bank, which I know that nobody really wants to say those words around this table, and I don't blame you, I don't really want to say them either. But that it was a different time. it was a different time. Individuals may have been working at home and may have had more availability. I think that may have changed a little bit. I think just starting with doing a closed bid and a sealed bid gives a wide breadth of individuals an opportunity to submit that bid. If that doesn't work, then we work through another option. We did, as your reminder, had to work through a couple different options at the land bank too, to see what worked best for our community. So starting with the sealed bid, I just think is the best way to start.
On that. Worked last time, it should work again.
Yeah.
I think our city attorney sold more real estate than any other realtor in town. This time around, so he certainly has a record of doing well, so.
So if you would like to do a sealed bid, I'm assuming that you would like to have a minimum.
I think we should do it.
How'd we do it the last time? Anybody recall? What was the
We
minimum?
started with a minimum that was not met in the land bank. And the very initial, remember we did that when we did the live auction and many of those lots were not sold. But then, and then we sold most of those lots, and I could be wrong, and our city manager certainly can jump in and tell me if I'm recall it differently, that many of those lots were sold at the base price that we had set.
Okay. And that base price was about what they sold for? Did they go up? And
I'm looking to see what, I don't think,
On which ones, Mike?
well, like on
you mean at the coves or here?
Coves or
these
Lakeside?
right here on.
Yeah, Lakeside,
It should be at
the
the,
minimum anyone paid was 10,000, and then it increased on a couple of those, I think,
A
to
couple
20
over
or
12, they say.
whatever.
Yeah. 14, okay.
I think we also need to remember when these were sold. I mean, I don't know when, these were several years ago, so. I'm not interested in just giving them away. I do
Yeah,
think
I
it's I think it's our responsibility. What we need to remember too is that the city actually utilized funds to buy this. These lands were not given to us. We purchased these land, or this land. It was not at an exorbitant price, and we've recouped that price. But we did use money to do that, so I'm not looking to give them away.
And I think lots in town are just a commodity right now anyway. Particularly ones like this that you're not on a through street. It's a pretty desirable spot.
Right.
So I think, if we were a private party selling it, we would price it accordingly.
Well, you have some just right up the road at Westwood that's selling, anywhere from 28 to 35. I don't think you're buying a lot right now in town for less than 15. And that's, some infill lots and things like that, like you say, through streets, things like that. So I think that's a fair,
Yeah.
low and high.
I think we also need to remember that the fact that, we can set a starting number. We don't have to accept any of the bids when they come through.
All bids, we want.
Yeah. So we can,
And as you said, the higher they sell, the more money available to build this park in time, potentially, and maintain other parks.
absolutely. I think at a minimum, we have to set a bottom bid of 12. The least expensive lot sold for 12,000, and it could be upwards of that, but I am not for going less than 12.
Yeah.
I would think closer to 20.
Yeah, I
It
was
more
thinking
20
even
was-
higher. Like you say,
Or somewhere in there, even, yeah. Because I know some of these lots look a little bit smaller maybe than some of the ones we sold previously, but still, the value property usually, and now that I'm thinking about it, usually properties sell for higher when they're in inflationary time as an auction versus a private.
oh, well, we should go way higher
Right.
than
Yeah,
inflation.
that's right. So I don't know if the auction is considered. Again, Elaine did a good job as our auctioneer last time.
So just as a starting number, do we want to do sealed bid, start them at 15? That's kind of somewhere in the middle, and go from there. Is that low enough, high enough?
15 is actually what I was thinking.
Would there be benefit to contacting, one of our local appraisers just to see if he has any kind of numbers about what things are going for? I'm I mean, I don't want to stifle the process at all. I just, I guess I'm still a little,
Would you want to do that before we set the bid or before we
Yeah,
start
that would be
accepting?
part of the information that would have to
We
go
gather.
out, so we'd have to, so maybe we, since we have some more progress, maybe we have our 39th discussion next Monday. And at that point, that gives us, we can maybe reach out and to see, what we think or what somebody might think that's worth. And then we kind of finalize everything that next Monday. And we know we're probably gonna do a sealed bid in 30 days, right? Because that's typical. So once it's posted, and then at that point, we're just kind of narrowing it down to where we want to start at.
It could be longer than 30 days considering what the publication schedule is on the newspaper
True.
nowadays. So
True.
we can cover things on the radio, we can cover things on our website. But if we put it in the paper and Melissa can work through those.
Well, I guess I'd like to say, just to kind of get maybe some hype going on the lots, is that we certainly are in favor of selling 11, 12, and 13.
yes.
Having another discussion next Monday, just to kind of set minimal and then time frame. And that way, kind of, like I said, kind of gets the public aware of movement.
So are you calling local appraiser or we?
I have one that lives with, I have a realtor that lives with me, so.
I mean, I would be clear I'm finding if there's consensus among everyone to start at 15, I don't want to stifle the process, start at 15. I just guess I was trying to gather more information, but I'm not going to be completely hurt if we go with 15.
And I'm okay with moving forward with the 15, and like you say, if it comes back and we're just not happy, we can always say no, for whatever reason. So
So the people just have one bid? I don't remember how we did this.
sealed bid, yeah, they come in with their latest and greatest.
Best bid.
Okay.
Are you gonna do it per lot or are you gonna allow them to group it together to buy all lots?
At a multi-lot price, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Can an individual offer a multi-lot price? I think we can review any bids. But what I'm not interested in doing is selling lot 11, 12, 13 to one person for one house. I'd really like to see more than one house.
I agree.
So he wants to put in the bids that one person can't buy all 3 lots if they're just gonna build one house.
Like, so just, the parcel can be,
Yeah, I don't think that gets us to where we're trying to go with selling and kind of accruing some tax dollars from multiple properties being there, in my mind. So I wouldn't be, willing to do all 3 of them. I mean, I think 12 and 13 are my concern with 12 and 13 is they're not deep. So you might have to buy 12 and 13 and put a house on those. Or maybe even 11 and 12. I just don't, I'd be okay with 2, but I don't think all 3.
Right.
So commissioners, are you okay with it starting at the 15?
I guess that'd be fun, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other finalities we need to figure out for sure?
No, we'll go get it drafted out and bring it back to you next Monday.
Sounds good. All right. That'll move us on to item 2, which is our continued discussion of automatic gate agreement with vehicle extrication outside of the city limits between the city of Ottawa and Franklin County. Chief Matthias, how are you?
Good. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Back to revisit this. I did look up some numbers. Last 5 years, we've done 20 extrications. You get too far back, we can't open them up without really doing a deep process. So I can't tell you which ones were out of town and which ones are in town. We just had an extrication today, so in town. So
that 21 in the last 5 years?
well, if you count today, yes, 21. But, they don't come around very often. I think the most in 1 year we had was 7. And that really probably is weather driven, probably a tough winter or something like that where we had to go out and assist out in the county. But in reviewing this, we'll go if we're needed. We'll be put on more of a standby until the local departments need help. If they don't need help, we turn around and come back home. And they know that, you know, if you don't need us, turn us around. And that's with any call we go out in the county, not just extrication. That's any type of call we go. Don't be wasting our time. You know, we need to get back. We will cover shortages with some overtime. Sean, Assistant Chief Dylan, and I also come in, and I'm still the chief, but then I count for a body when needed. So that's how we cover it. And that's not just on this call; it's on every call we go out on. So, is there any questions on this?
So I guess on a call, how do you know you're gonna need that? You know,
Well, so dispatch will ask if anybody's entrapped,
okay,
and if they are, then that's kind of the signal
Okay.
that
so you'll know right when the call comes in.
yeah.
Most of the time, rather than have to
Yeah.
wait for it to come second.
Right,
I
right.
gotcha.
So, I mean, sometimes we're trapped and you just go open the door and you get them out, you know,
Okay.
or they really are, entrapped and we have to take them out. So, for instance, today it was a fairly easy one. We called pop the door off, but she wouldn't have gotten out without that.
Okay.
So, it just, things happen.
With the right tools, anything is possible,
You know,
generally.
that's right. And the tools that we got on a FEMA grant last year, we got close to $100,000 worth of tools that cost us, on the city's share was about $3,500. So we're very well equipped for multiple type rescues, but vehicle rescue is we got some really good equipment. So.
Commissioners, any other questions for Chief Matthias? Is everybody okay with moving the automatic aid agreement on to Wednesday's agenda?
Yep.
That's what we'll do, Chief, thanks.
Thank you very much.
That'll move us on to our 2023 operating budget review. Here we go. Melanie, come on down. You don't want any part of this? Your name's on, yeah, I can say, your name's on here.
You like it or not, you're gonna get
We have about an hour-long discussion for each utility.
Perfect.
No, I'm kidding. So actually, this is the,
We don't know,
no,
you're
it
kidding.
is.
I've sat through some like 4-hour budget meetings,
Yeah.
so I feel like
Yeah.
we don't know that you're kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm kidding. And actually, I feel like we have a little more refined process this year so that we're not spending hours going over the minute details, but more focusing on the big impact for each of the funds or each of the utilities or the functions and operations. So this,
Somebody get that verbatim, what she just said. I'm gonna print it out in front of everybody here in like 2 months.
great. So when we started this process of putting together the budget for this year, everybody is on the same page. But when we bring these to you, each of the funds have a little bit different impact on the total budget, right? So the utilities don't impact our mill levy. They are separate. They have their own separate funds, their own separate revenue source. And that's important to remember because when we talk about them, we have to talk about the rates that are used to charge services, and the amount of services that are used and the revenue that's brought in is all that you have to support the operations, the capital improvements, any equipment purchases, big long-term plans impacts, all of those things are for each utility separately. So what we have today for you is water and wastewater. And we thought we would start with those two. We're going to talk about them individually. And Director Tharp is actually going to have his staff talk to you about each of the divisions within each of the utilities. And we'll start with water first, and I'll come back to you after they have a discussion about expenditures, and we'll talk a little bit about revenues and maybe what our next steps might be in the process of discussing utilities. So for now, I'm going to turn it over to them.
And so you're not going to hear so directly from me today, but one of the things that we would like for you to keep in mind is as I was asked to be a part of Mr. Hateflee's departure for a year, one of the things that we wanted to look at very hard was what we had as far as capabilities internally. what our succession might look like as some of us older folks begin to disappear. And so this is kind of our first blush at this. These folks have worked very hard to put these budgets together, and I'm anxious to have them present. We will be here. The whole water, wastewater superintendent staff is here, prepared to answer questions as you all go through this. And keep in mind, and they already know this is kind of an evaluation period, for some of these folks that will still be around. So while budget is the main focus here, there is a little bit of an evaluation process that we will be involved with here too. So I'm gonna turn it over to these guys, and like Ms. Landis said, we hope you're impressed with the new process.
Who's gonna unveil it? Look at Scott, excellent.
First
This
victim,
isn't gonna
step
be a
up.
kiss cam, is it? I know where else kiss
Oh, that was great, wasn't it? So, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Scott Sneathen, Water Treatment Plant Superintendent. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the water treatment requested 2023 budget. As you know, it is our goal to provide the safest, most economical, best tasting water possible for the city of Ottawa and surrounding rural water districts that we serve. We continue to meet and exceed any and all regulations set forth by federal and state agencies, something we are definitely proud of. As you can see, we are asking for a substantial increase of $800,000 over the 2022 approved budget. $332,000 of that increase comes out of capital, specifically for tower maintenance at our 3 water towers. This increase is associated with previously scaled back maintenance on all 3 towers. Our biggest expense coming from our south tower, which needs a complete removal of existing paint coatings and a new coating put on after. Our north tower needs the overflow moved to the exterior of the tank as a result of deteriorating brackets that hold the overflow in place. Both changes will have no impact on the quality of water that is produced or supplied to our customers. Operating expenses are another large portion of this increase. With the EPA's lead and copper rule revisions requiring the city to conduct a water service supply line inventory, there will be large associated costs to complete this process. Along with that, we would like to partner with our engineering firm and conduct a master plan study of the water plant and its operations. Our water system is continually meeting and exceeding federal and state regulations, but we want to ensure we are staying ahead of future regulations that are already in the planning phases and continue to monitor our community needs in order to stay compliant. Another portion of the operating expense will be an addition of a loop lock system to cover our treatment basins. Also in 2023, we would also like to replace our current lawnmower at the water treatment facility. Again, thank you for allowing me to come and present the requested 2023 budget for water production. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Scott, I'm wondering, are we someday looking for a rate increase? I don't know when the last one we had and how much it was. Do you have any of that information?
The last rate increase for the water utility was in 2018. That would have been the last year of an increase, so we haven't had one for a couple of years.
I'm wondering sometime maybe we can look and see what other cities our size are charging for water. And I don't know if we have something like that, but it seems like we've always been kind of a little bit behind on getting that up and making electricity as well. And I think it always sounds bad to, yeah, we got to increase rates someday, and it's always a bad word, raising taxes and all, but still at the same time, we need to be able to provide, like for our capital needs here, that's a pretty sizable capital investment here, but it's needed. It's not like it's a want. And so we're going to have to do that someday, some way, I think, to make sure we're staying, not necessarily competitive, but in our peer group at least.
And we have a few more thoughts for you on that when we, after they're done presenting, we'll talk a little bit more about the options we have with some of these larger improvements, and then also with the rates and the study that we've done recently. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that too, certainly.
And one time we were talking about it, fair well work too. Is that anything more new about that, or wasn't there something about, I remember from years ago?
No, it's
Placement.
it's on the
Yeah.
horizon of
Not right away.
right.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about Clearwell since the commission turned down the funding for it.
Yeah. no, I know.
But
Yeah.
it will come back because you're gonna need to do that.
A necessity.
Well, we have looked at that, Commissioner Skidmore, and Scott, you can elaborate a little bit if you want to, but just so you understand, what we believe now is that another clear well is really not worth the money spent to accomplish that. While it is a single point of failure, we believe there are other options. And we have been looking at those other options to provide that. Our plant is not new. And our fear is, we put a clear well in that doesn't adapt to what may be a new plant that we have to build at some point in time. And so we're weighing all of those together to make sure we make the right decision.
Okay, so we're looking at it. That's good. All right. Good.
And that will be a part of that engineering piece, that master plan, to figure out what would work and what wouldn't.
What is a loop lock system?
Loop lock system is basically a cover for your basins. They primarily, Loop Lock is a brand. They specialize in pool covers, in-ground pool covers. But a part of their organization is dedicated to water treatment and wastewater treatment basins. So it's a polypropylene cover that blocks UV. It'll stop algae growth. It'll help us in our process by lowering chemical costs. But basically all it is, it really looks like almost like a trampoline pad that just goes straight over the top of the basins to block everything.
And that's the two basins on just off beach.
Well, these are the treatment plant basins.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Sorry, pardon me.
Yeah.
Second Street. Okay.
And Commissioner Skidmore, the master plan, probably the first time we talked about Clearwell was under the first master plan, which was many years ago. And it is timely to do another master plan. It will not be inexpensive. But what that master plan will do will map you out the next 10, 20 years and get you current with clean water standards.
Scott, can you tell me about, a little bit about, do you happen to know the age of the south and the north towers?
1952.
For both of them? You
Yep.
had them both in
The-
52? Okay.
Yeah. And the last time the south tower the exterior was painted was in 2002. The dome was painted on it in 2009. The exterior of the north tower, was in 2014.
The whole thing was in
Yep.
2014?
Yep.
And then was that something that you anticipate that we will contract out for?
Yes.
I mean, it's a specialty thing, which will also include, looks like some moving of items in the north tower. I mean, you're looking to
Yes.
move, yeah.
It would be the same thing we did to the south tower in 2020. Move that interior overflow line to the outside. It just makes it easier to maintain the interior of that tank for our tank maintenance crew.
Great, thank you.
So on the previously minimized maintenance for the three water towers, would you say that primarily was budget constraints previously, that we've kind of stopped doing things as much?
I wouldn't say we
Historically?
stopped doing things as much. I think that I was in constant contact with our tank maintenance company, and I would ask them every year, where are we at with this? What are we needing to do? And it's finally to the point now where he's like,
Time to move.
time to move. If we don't, then,
Yeah.
we'll start deteriorating more on the outside of the tank.
So Scott, in that 203,000 in contractual services, what's included in that?
30,000 of it is a grout inspection on our treatment plant. We have some infiltration and rainwater, and we need to figure out where that's coming from. And unfortunately, a lot of our plant is over our basins, so it's gonna be a little pricey to get those inspected. And then the other one, the biggest one is our supply line inventory. With the EPA's Get the Lead Out initiative, trying to get all the lead out of water service lines. It's gonna take a big part of us and Justin's crew to figure out just what we have in the ground in the way of lead. Right now, we don't think there's a whole lot of anything in, but we have to determine that from EPA. They won't let us go on assumption.
Is that for the EPA just for water supply or for wastewater as well?
Water supply.
Okay.
Yep. There's 3 points of contact we have to have. We have to have the private side, inside the home, and then the city side. We have to know all 3 of those points of supply line for them. And then just that other was the master plan from our engineering firm.
And I do like that you pointed out, and I'd like to mention as well, that the cost of pipe being over 3 times as expensive as it was in 2019. It was affecting every sector, but obviously you guys replacing water lines will definitely be hit by that as well. So.
Yeah, and I'll speak to a little bit more to that here in a minute, but yeah, we're looking at triple, sometimes quadruple the prices of pipe, depending on the size.
And keep in mind, commissioners, as you go through this, you're looking at 2 separate departments within the water side.
Yeah.
You know, one is the treatment side, and what you're about to hear after you're through with your questions is the distribution side.
So in a situation like this, because we're gearing up for 3 or 4 times the cost on the supply lines, this is our 2023 budget though. So hopefully by then, some of those costs come down and that would just be surplus.
Well, I wouldn't use the word surplus. If you leave that budgeted amount in there, you have, and it comes in at a better price. If everything comes in at a better price, you have greater budget flexibility in that line item if you need it. So, you know, what we're doing, what we always do with the budget, is we're betting 18 months from now that it's a scenario that we talked about here.
And Commissioner, I think you always know, and I would like to point out on top of that, that we don't lack for things to get done. If there would be any kind of excess of money, let's say the price of pipe does go down, we have projects to get accomplished.
And I would also say, Mayor, that the copper and lead, or the lead line is a big concern. But Dennis and I were at a conference last week that they can't necessarily, the state is trying to figure out all the rules themselves. But you can't sit here now and not put a dollar figure in for next year, even though we don't know what that, we're making some educated stabs in the dark.
And we believe that we are totally blessed to the end that we are able to sit here and talk to you about being able to do this, because there are a number of communities that can't even have this conversation. They can't even have this conversation, and what the EPA does with that is yet to be figured out.
Well, and I like the idea of what you said, that if hopefully the prices come down, that we just do more projects.
That's
I
exactly
think that's a
right.
great idea.
Any other questions on this division for water?
Pretty painless,
On
guys.
to distribution?
Sure.
Pretty painless.
Yeah,
I mean,
man.
You
That's
have,
it.
okay.
All right.
stick around, something else might come up though.
All right. Now, I'd like to present to you the requested 2023 budget of water distribution. So again, we're talking the other side of it. Our water distribution department strives to keep the continuous flow of high-quality tap water to the city of Ottawa surrounding rural water districts in approximately 100 miles of water line. Fire protection throughout the city is greatly enhanced by us ensuring that over 600 fire hydrants within the city work properly. By continuing with our replacement schedules and maintenance, we have seen a dramatic reduction in water breaks each year, thus creating less interruptions for our customers. We are requesting a significant increase of close to $540,000 over the approved 2022 budget. The bulk of that increase is primarily due to the economic climate we are all facing. In just over 3 years, much of our piping tripled in price and others even higher. Safety is our #1 priority, and we're requesting funds to replace a deteriorating 20-year-old trench box that will be split between the water fund and wastewater fund. This is extremely vital to our safety and protection while working in the trenches. One of our greatest assets is our Geographic Information System, commonly referred to as GIS. We are requesting funds along with 3 other divisions to update our map with a more current look of our city. Another major impact on the overall increase is the purchase of a new backhoe in 2023. Our current unit is approaching 6,000 hours and is 10 years old. Day-to-day operations would not be possible without the use of an operational backhoe. As you know, updating our infrastructure is a vital part in maintaining the quality of water to our customers. Keeping with our water main replacement program, we're requesting funds to support replacement of approximately 2,000 feet of 12-inch water main located between 17th and 19th Street on Elm, due to this line having several leaks over the last few years. Also, 2,000 feet of 12-inch on Davis Avenue between Industrial and North Street. That stretch of line needs upsize from existing 10-inch, which has had numerous leaks as well. Along with our 12-inch mainline projects, we would also like to replace aging, smaller diameter lines throughout the city to increase flow, therefore needing a more robust inventory of pipe on hand. Again, thank you all for allowing me to present the requested 2023 budget for water distribution, and we're here to answer any of your questions you might have. Thank you.
Do you guys just have the one trench box?
We have 2 different sizes. We have a 8x14, and that's the one that needs to be replaced. And we have a 8x8.
Okay.
So the public knows, can you explain to them what the trench box is?
We put when we're digging a trench, anything over 5 foot the person in the trench needs.
Come join me.
Yeah.
Needs to
Come
be,
join me. Bring yourself up here.
anybody in the ditch that's deeper than 5 feet needs to be protected from cave-ins and collapses, which is.
Yeah, it is an OSHA violation if you
Yes.
don't have a trench box,
Yes.
which could potentially put us at risk, I would
Yep.
assume,
Correct,
if we don't have one.
yes. And the one we have now it's seen its useful life.
Our goal, our absolute goal in every department and every division is that everybody goes home. And these are the kinds of things that we have seen more than one time where people didn't go home. We do not want that to happen
We
with
did
our
have
folks.
with Kansas City somewhere just recently, about a month ago, somebody, just.
When those ditches cave in, the man in that ditch really has little to no chance.
Yeah.
You know, once he's waist deep even, and you can talk to Chief Matthias about that. But once they go to extricate, quite honestly, they usually call a family before they pull them out.
Small price to pay for all that.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right.
Absolutely.
And this may be more for commissioners, maybe even you should, on the, like a capital purchase. So I'm assuming we sell the old unit on Purple Wave,
For the
the
backhoe?
backhoe that we're
Is there
replacing.
trade-in value? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, does that kind of offset the cost? Does that stay within the department or come to a general fund?
Great question.
I'm just gonna stay up.
Okay, sorry.
No, so we do it both ways, but I think that what's working, better across all the departments is if you're going to sell it, we don't actually know what that value is going to be. Trade-in is sometimes less than what you're hoping for. So, for example, something we just did was we sold them on Purple Wave, and then we used that money to go back into our equipment reserve, and then we put that money against the next equipment purchase. So we may not know, I don't know exactly what that impact's gonna be, so we're budgeting for the full cost. And then we'll kind of make that determination later. And part of budgeting, our city manager talked about it earlier, was you want to have that budget authority built in, and if you don't have to use it, great. It's still there as a flexibility for the other things that need to happen, but that doesn't mean you have to spend every dollar that you budget for.
So did we already replace one backhoe
Yes,
recently? So how many do we have?
2,
Two? So this would be the second one?
yes,
So we'd have 2 new ones.
correct.
And then Scott, for clarification, in our notes, it says we're doing 4,000 feet from 12-inch water from 17th in Elm to 19th in Elm. In yours, you mentioned it was 2,000 feet
Yep,
and
that
then
was a
2,000 somewhere else.
clerical error on my
Okay, just
part.
making sure.
Yes.
Can you
yeah,
remind
they're
me where that other 2,000 is?
At Industrial to North Street on Davis Avenue.
Thank you.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Melanie, but right now, those capital equipment, tobacco, is budgeted in there as a cash, one-time cash purchase. And
Yes.
when you get around to it, it may be more beneficial to do a lease purchase on it.
Yes, that's true. Yes, so we have the option of doing a lease purchase on it as well. Of course, our first approach is always see what we can do with cash. And then if we need to make some changes there to get us by, remembering that when you do a lease purchase, you're pushing that cost out for the next 4 years, impacting the next 4 years' budgets as well. But there are situations where you want to do that because you need to be able to accomplish more with the cash dollars you have available in this one upcoming year.
If I could say something real quick about the water department. In ISO, when we do our ISO reclassifications, there's 30 points possible for the water department, and they're at 28.9 points out of the 30. And so every time we get looked at, reclassified, the examiner's like, you don't understand this is probably one of the best water departments in the state. So we just don't find this, that many points. And they look at a whole gamut of things. And so, they do a great job.
And that ISO rating that's good benefits us on insurance costs.
Everybody.
Yep.
That's everybody.
Yeah.
And what did you say that rating was?
28.9.
So 29.
Yeah.
And historically, is that a pretty average lifespan, 6,000 hours, 10 years?
Generally,
Once a
we're looking
decade
at
or so.
replacement at 5,000 hours.
Mhm.
We start getting over that, you get a lot more
Maintenance
mechanical
costs.
issues and
Tire falls off.
Tired, yeah.
wheels falling
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
And you don't want issues when there's water,
Yes,
In
correct,
front of
And
Commissioner
people at
Skidmore.
home don't want issues either.
correct.
You could plan that again when the tire falls off in front of one of the commissioners, and it kind of helps with the decision making.
I don't know if I can talk anybody to get in it.
Commissioners, any other questions about this department? If not, we'll move on to the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis, do you have anything else you want to add about expenditures overall?
I don't believe so,
No? Okay.
no.
So what we included in the memo to you was just a table that just outlined the current year's budget, 22 budget, where we think those projections are gonna be for 22, and then this 23 estimates, both for revenues and expenditures. I know this is small print and we're not really to the point of nailing down the budgets yet for each of these utilities, but the point of putting this in front of you was to show you that all of those large capital expenditures that we have in maintaining this excellent utility and the way that it's rated and the things that we have to do to be able to provide all of that quality water to our residents, our customers, those large costs have to be supported by the revenue that's coming in. So you'll notice at the end of that table, it shows that there's $1 million deficit there at the end of our 23 column. And there's a variety of ways that we can tackle that. We have done a rate study. We have been working on it for the last year, and we have some conversation to bring to you related to rates overall. We can talk about deferring some of the cost whether that is financing some of those projects or deferring them to future years, just the entire project altogether. And in some cases, we can do that. In some cases, we really shouldn't do that. We have been deferring some of those projects in past years, just enough to try and make sure, try and catch up overall in all of our utilities. The one example would be the tower maintenance. So that's a big project and those are big dollars, but it is maintenance, and that maintenance needs to be done between every 5 to 10 years. And the reality is if we finance that, we're financing something that might be out of its useful life before we pay it off. And so those are the types of things we want to build into our structure, our financial structure and our rate structure, to make sure we're able to cover those maintenance things as they come up. And we're trying to build towards that. I think that everybody's done a really good job of where they are right now, and we've done a really good job at looking towards the future of what that might look like in the next 5 to 10 years. Our rate study is, we did look at it for 10 years. Some of that, after you get beyond the next couple of years, it's all up in the air, right? It's our best guess, and that's all we can do at this point. Prices have gone up significantly, but we also cannot look into our crystal ball and see whether they're going to come back down, whether that's going to be quickly, whether it's going to be a longer term impact. All of those things have an impact there. So we do want to have a further conversation about rates and a potential rate increase for the water utility. At this point, we want to know from you, is that a conversation you want to have? And if we are going to have that conversation, we're looking at maybe in the next couple of weeks bringing something back to you to talk a little bit about what that might look like. Right now, just a draft rate increase could potentially be somewhere around increasing the demand charge to by $2 and increasing the volume charge by 3%. Those impacts, what we want to bring back to you is what that looks like for the customer, what it looks like for the utility overall, and how long it might take us to build at that rate, the ability to be able to pay for some of those future improvements. So I didn't want to include all of those details today, but I did want to put a little bit of information out to you to make sure that you knew that that's where we were headed. And as long as you're on board with having that conversation, then we will be back to you with that.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore that nobody likes to have that discussion. But I also don't want to get into where we got into with the electric utility, where we were 14 years behind and had to do a 10, a 9, and a 5% increase in 3 years. So I'm all in favor for having a yearly discussion about the rate increases.
Okay.
I agree too about using cash or lease purchase, and it's a hard thing to know. I mean, we weren't earning anything basically on our idle cash, so may as well use the cash for something. But I realize with liquidity, we got to have that as well. And I don't know, you don't know where you are if you have enough liquidity until you really, really need it. And then what do you do? There's a fine line between those two. So.
Here's the reason why you want good liquidity. I want you to think about Andover, Kansas. A disaster like that could happen to any community. And yes, there'll be federal money and there'll be state money, but you still have a gap. And you still, when you get into an emergency like that or a crisis like that, you still have to keep the operation going. And you want to make sure you have enough liquidity that you can fill that gap till you can actually get money back flowing into the system from those other entities that are going to help rebuild the community.
Yeah, good job using a water reference there on the whole. I was impressed that you put a water reference in there. Nice job.
That part of our rate study was trying to determine what should that target cash balance be. And we've landed in that we feel comfortable with having 3 months worth of operating expenses plus about 500,000 in infrastructure and 100,000 for equipment. Those numbers are really flexible amongst all of those, but it lands somewhere around 1.5 million for 2023 is what we'd like for that target fund balance to be, that cash balance at the end of the year. And that is what you can, then that you have something that you can come back to, and it helps to offset those future costs. You're building towards being able to pay cash in the future and maybe avoid interest rates, all of those types of things. So yes, yes, that you're correct, and I should have mentioned that earlier, but that's something that we've been working towards establishing, and that's what we've been trying to form our rate analysis around meeting those targets.
And I know one time we seemed to use the utility department for transfers because that's where the cash was. And I felt in some way that wasn't really fair to the utility department. And then they became the bank of the utility department, kind of like KDOT was for the state. But I think that this could be something we can work towards, that I like being on utility money to somewhat stay there to help whether
I would just point out that those transfers, you can look at them as taxpayer dividends also, but they keep your property tax levy down at least 10 to 13 mils a year.
I also, if I can add to that, so one of the benefits and also the downside of having a utility operate on its own is through a city setup, you share a lot of resources, right? So if you had an outside entity, you would have your own HR manager, you would have your own finance director, your own director, CEO, CFO, all those things go along with, as well as a myriad of other positions. And so the general fund is supporting some of those functions for each of those utilities. And so there are some costs that you would consider that should be shared costs. And those transfers should be used to cover what those shared costs should be. Now, to your point, I think we should do a look at that and see what does that even come up to be. You know, are we in the right range? I would imagine that at some point we were in the right range. Probably be a good thing to work towards doing something like that.
And I believe we decreased the electric transfer and we have not increased the others. So we've kind of worked through that, but it's not a simple discussion because of this interconnectivity. That's electric.
Good job.
The interconnectivity
I've been working
between
all
all
weekend on
these
this.
funds. Years and years ago, there used to be one fund. One fund had in all cities, one fund had all utilities in it, the entire operation of the city. That was kind of the basic way that things started out. And then as cities grew and got more sophisticated and took lessons from the private side, your utilities grew into enterprise funds. So.
And there are other transfers that do come out of the water utility specifically. They do pay for a small portion of the community service fund, which we provide dollars towards the community and certain activities that you'll hear about later in this budget process. We do transfer some dollars to risk management, which is where we split the cost of insurance for all the utilities and the general operations of the city. And then in addition to, we transfer to the bond and interest fund to make debt payments for them related specifically to the water fund.
makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say too, and especially since I have been doing what I've been doing of late, a lot of times we got to take a step back because we're all in this together. I mean, every dollar that we're talking about here is community money. Every single dollar, no matter whether it's coming from utilities or we're accomplishing something in the general fund. And, this is how, as Richard said, on a larger scale, on a more global scale, I think it's really important that we, keep our eyes on the prize, so to speak. And the other thing that I would mention, while I'm talking is that these budgets, as you look at them, keep in mind, over the last few years, we have learned how to reduce budgets.
Yep.
And when we approach these budgets, you're seeing probably as realistic a budget as I've looked at in my 22 years here. These are numbers that we truly believe are things that we need to accomplish and what it will take to get things done. So that I just want you to understand, when we didn't walk in here and say, well, yeah, it's going to cost this much, so we ought to add 40%. That is not how we approach these budgets.
Yeah, and I would say that this crew has done a really good job at looking at all of the big projects, and some of them, even we have ongoing projects that we're still working towards, like replacement of the AMI meters. We thought we'd have it done in a set period of time. We're still working towards it because those budgets haven't been able to maybe have the accelerated dollars that they needed to be able to change out more. They have the capability of changing out more at a time, just not the dollars there to do it more quickly. And so we're also looking at ways that we can try to advance that a little bit too, maybe tying up that project a little more quickly than we right now. It might take us another 5 years at this rate. And so we need to keep looking for ways to be able to find dollars to get that done quicker, so everybody can benefit from those types of projects as well.
Those are all very conscious on the revenue side. You know, it's not just, here's what I need. Everybody's taking a total look at, can we really get that because there's enough revenue coming in to do so? And so the big picture is there in what we're presenting in these budgets.
Oh, just a little aside, are those AMI meters, the electronic water meters, the new ones that?
Water and electric, yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're ones that pass data right back to City Hall.
So I can't go out and spin it backwards like a
You can try.
Okay.
You can run around your house and try it, I mean,
What
do
did I
whatever.
just say about safety? Didn't we just talk
Yeah.
about safety?
I would say don't do that.
Don't-
Yeah. The fire chief says.
Do you have any more questions about the water utility?
Commissioners, can we give Ms. Landis a little direction here, because she mentioned earlier about having a discussion or potential discussion about rate increases? Are we in consensus here to, to tell her that, yes, let's have that discussion, come back to us with some possibilities of what those rate increases might be?
I would think so.
I prefer to see a proposal.
Any other questions? All right, stay here.
Same.
Okay. Item 4, resolution of intent to finance certain vehicles with the issuance of federally.
No, you're moving on way too quickly. We still need to talk about the wastewater fund.
Or, nutty.
Oh, okay. So we're past all that. Come on.
They have
I'm trying to save us money here.
Right, 22.
Listen, they have a
Get rid of
really
those two,
great
that would be great.
presentation for you too.
I guess it'd just be okay then. What?
Get some
Yeah,
Dan.
we'll talk about that
Want us to
later.
do that?
I heard him say approved.
That they make the
Wow, good
decisions.
job, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. So this, all of the same comments regarding the wastewater utility. It's a standard alone fund. The revenues are specific to this fund, and the expenditures have to be spent from this fund as well. And they have prepared, besides the memos that you received in your packet, a presentation for you, and we can answer any of the questions that you have.
And I'm Dan Riney, I'm Assistant Utilities Director. I appreciate Mr. Mayor and Commissioners allowing us to present this way this year. I find it ironic that I'm standing here when we talked about secession because I'm old.
I don't know why you're looking at me.
Dan, you can thank her. I wasn't gonna let you speak.
Duly noted. Yeah. The goal of the water reclamation facility is to effectively and efficiently return the cleanest water we can back to the environment, which in this case is the Merizine River, which is where we take it out of in the first place. We do that consistently well below the permit limits that are enforced by the regulatory agencies, and we too are extremely proud of the quality of water we do put back in the river. The operating budget for the water reclamation facility is actually only showing a $75,000 increase in 23 over the 22 budget. Primarily that's driven by the request to purchase a pickup truck to replace a 20-year-old pickup truck. Replace a mower. We have two mowers that are both right at 2,000 hours. And it's a flip of the coin if you ask me which one of those two we would replace. Probably whichever one's not running the day the new one gets here. One of the biggest impacts in that budget request only being $75,000 is the fact that within the last year, we have made a huge change in how we handle the ultimate disposal of our biosolids, the sludge that we dewater. And that's shown so far somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000 a year savings over the old style of doing it. And we're pretty proud of that operation. Out of the 2022 budget, it should be noted that we are replacing a small pump station that services the Rockwood Acres neighborhood. That particular unit was put in service in 1952 when they built Rockwood Acres, and probably had a legitimate life expectancy of 30 years, so it's time at 70 years. We are also doing two other significant projects initiated in 22 and will be completed in 23. First one of those is the replacement of the ultraviolet disinfection system at the wastewater plant. But as you probably may all remember, due to the positive thinking of your group, that's going to be funded by the ARPA. It's one of the projects that you earmarked ARPA funds for. The other big project that is really pretty exciting is it appears we're moving forward with the construction of what we call the Cottonwood Lift Station. It'll be a new lift station at the end of Cottonwood, hence the name. What that will do for us is it will eliminate a lift station on Logan Street, which also is vintage 1950s. It will relieve, along with the pump station, it will also provide an additional crossing under the river. Right now, everything on the north side of the river goes through one of 5 different pump stations, but it all ends up at the river lift pump station because that's the one crossing under the river. Once this station is up and running and we have 2 crossings, it will not only provide a lot more capacity for development in that part of the city, it'll greatly reduce the load on river lift and some of these other stations. So ultimately providing some possibility for additional loads everywhere north of the river. And that is being funded through the recently awarded base grant. And that was pretty short and sweet, but that's the 2023 budget request for the water reclamation facility. I would entertain any questions.
So when we, I want to reiterate this, when we do the Cottonwood Lift project, that allows for growth out there because there are properties that surround that are not in the city that may come into the city.
Absolutely.
And there's development that is going to happen out there on East Logan that has not happened yet. So this lift station will continue to handle those and for future growth.
Correct.
Dan, do you happen to know, and this is more sensitive information, but how many citizens live on the north side of Ottawa?
I have no idea.
I just wondered. I mean, with only one line, I mean, that is of concern. If something were to happen to that, that certainly.
And most of our industrial customers are on the north side at this point in time too. So it is a concern. It's one we've been talking about for several years. And one that, like Dan said, we're very excited to get done if we can get this accomplished through the space grant.
Yeah, and I believe that river crossing from River Lift was redone in early 2000s.
So short,
originally
a short 20 years ago.
a short one, as opposed to the previous one that was done 50 years prior to that. No more questions?
So on the capital projects, not yet. On the capital projects, you talk about 30,000 feet of relining, which I'm assuming is in situ form, probably.
Yeah, if I could,
Yeah.
I've got the presentation for the collection system.
Okay.
It's, we look at them as, it's
I'm
like.
excited to get ahead of you.
I know.
Again, there's two
Sure.
different, on the wastewater side, we have the treatment side and the collection side.
Sure.
We haven't got the collection side yet.
I got more questions on that side.
Yeah.
Any questions
You wanna
on
drag
this
your chair
one?
back up here now?
Any other questions for this one, commissioners? Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, well, we will move right into the collection division. Their goal is to maintain the sewers collection system so that we can safely get untreated wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant so it can be treated. And to do so, and they provide a tremendous health feature to the community that we in this country take for granted, frankly. Anyway, the wastewater collection budget for 2023 is requesting overall $150,000 increase. That's the bottom line increase. 100,000 of that is to replace a dump truck that is not only 10 years old, it has in recent times suffered from a plethora of mechanical issues and is just really in need of replacement. The remainder of the $150,000 is taken up by the wastewater half of all the things that Scott told you about in water distribution. The upgrade for the GIS, this fund will pay half of the trench box. What else was it? The extreme increase in supplies and material, costs of supplies and material that we're experiencing now. So basically it mirrors it's our portion of that. The issue that the mayor wants to talk about is by reducing several other line items from the current budget, we're asking to increase the in situ form budget to 500,000 this year, which is an increase of 200,000. We are frankly, again, trying to play some catch up because in recent years we have not funded that to the amount that for years we did. So we're trying to do some catch up. We're looking to do 30,000 feet of pipe next year. And you jump in here if you need to, but for those who don't know what in situ form is, that's a brand name, but it's called CPP, cast in place pipe. They put a tube in a pipe, expand it with hot water. The hot water activates the resin in it, and it basically swells up and becomes a piece of plastic pipe inside the pipe. It is the far and away most cost-effective way to do this. So many of the lines we do are under streets that if you were open cutting them, you'd be doing pavement projects and everything else. So
how many feet of city block do you think that 30,000 equates to?
how many blocks does?
Yeah, how many blocks?
Our city blocks are roughly anywhere from 500 to 650 feet
Yeah.
long
Yeah,
on any given block.
say about 10 blocks in it.
Yes.
Or, no, you said 30,000, say about 5 city blocks.
Yeah.
And just think, and those are 5 city blocks. You
Hold
don't
on,
have
hold on.
way-
That is zero.
If it's
Yeah.
500,
more.
yeah, yeah.
that is
Come
zero.
on, banker, where are you at? Are you asleep?
That's less than what we did this year.
If it's
50
500, yeah,
blocks.
that's 600 blocks.
How much is that?
I knew you knew the whole time, Commissioner Skidmore. I was letting people just sit by, yeah, I know.
Just enjoying this.
Yes.
So you wonder why we're all overdrawn.
What number did we
That's how we
agree
make
upon? My point is, how many city blocks does that 30,000 feet equate to?
I believe we did, I haven't figured out the.
Just a
amount on
wild
that.
Well,
guess.
if they're 500 feet, so what you said, 500 feet?
So that's 60 blocks that we don't have to open cut.
Right.
When is the first time, or when, do you recall when we started utilizing this technology?
I remember when I first started with the city almost 10 years ago, we had VHS tapes of when they were doing this. So I want to say at least 20 years ago.
And so is there any, have we gone back to see how those that were done 20 years ago, how those are faring?
Other than 30, they look the same as the day they were put in.
Okay,
Because those are the
That's
ones
good
you're
to know.
cammering, right?
Yes, we
Okay.
stay on top of camera and cleaning all that.
Generally speaking, they'll give 50 years. They have 50-year life.
So to go along with the in situ form, what I was getting at is you mentioned in here purchasing more root foam. Can you explain to us what the root foam is?
I'll let Justin do that.
We generally contract that out, but we found that we can do that in-house with substantial savings when we're out cleaning and cameraing the lines in town. And the root foam is any joints in our clay tile pipe where roots are getting in, homeowner service lines where they connect to our main sewer, they get roots in them. We root foam it and it allows to kill the roots. It's a benefit to us and part of the homeowners that are attached to that line.
For sure. Do you guys have obviously a high level idea of what the savings is for like constituform, say per 1,000 feet,
Oh.
opposed to actually if we had to go in and didn't approve this line item and dig it up and replace it?
Well, I can tell you with the increase in concrete, and you do anything in a paved area, you gotta use flow fill. And $150 a yard. For that, you figure average, we're 10 foot deep, 3 foot wide. If you figure up the yards in a block,
Man hours, I'm sure.
just the equipment, the man hours.
Do you think it's a 10x? It would be 10 times more expensive to replace a line than in situ forming.
Yes.
Probably more than that.
Probably more.
So I'm gonna say, we
Hundred
generally
X.
will open cut, replace 2 lines a year versus being able to do 13, 20,
Yeah.
30,000 feet of in situ.
So even though 200,000 seems like a lot of money, it's saving
Yes,
a lot more money.
I've seen one
Yeah.
block use 200,000 in flow fill.
Mm.
Well,
Because of-
we just bought pipe for 2 blocks.
Mhm.
It was $58,000.
Oh.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
A lot safer. too.
Yeah.
Yes, the number one thing, safety. We're actually doing an open cut right now,
Mm.
and generally a 2 to 3 week process. If we were doing that with flow fill, it's collapsing quite often, so safety with the
Mhm.
trench pumps and, but if we were doing that and had to flow fill that, you're getting 10 foot wide, 10 foot deep.
Yeah. And when
The
you're crossing
safety.
roadways, it's a hassle for people every
Yes.
day. We're crossing out.
Yes. They're in and out in a day.
Yeah.
Per line versus upwards of a month for us to open cut.
Two other questions.
Okay.
You mentioned the new trench box. You guys are covering half and the water distribution's doing the other half, so we're only replacing one?
We're
Yes.
Okay,
replacing
just
one.
making sure.
Yes,
Just making sure.
they're using both.
And you've mentioned upgrade the GIS a couple of times. What does that entail and how does it benefit?
Well, there's, how many departments are involved in that?
We have electric, wastewater, water distribution, broadband, and stormwater, if I didn't mention that. All of that is on this GIS map. That way we can identify all of our assets, and I could go on for hours how many assets are on there. Basically identifies location, size, type, things like that. So when we're looking at projects, we know, and we have a long way to go with this to where we can go on forever adding on things. But with the growth in town, with new developments and just the addition of all these houses, our last flyover was 2016. And we got water line, electric out there in open fields, basically. I mean, so it's time to update. That way, it helps us. I mean, the GIS actually will help in a storm situation. You know, it'll help. We can track ourselves and find what streets we need to go to or whatever. The street sign's gone.
Might mention the Tido or Doppler and asset management.
Yes, and actually, the GIS is gonna be a big part of the lead service line. And with our Doppler system, that the emergency call-in, that's all tied to our GIS and how we function on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you.
So again, we're looking at this, also the truck for 100,000 estimated cost. That's also possibly looking at lease purchase or just like the backhoe. Okay.
Could be, right now it's included there as a cash purchase, just to get a good feel for total overall request.
Any other questions on that budget? On to the next.
I would say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you. I might just go ahead and cover the transfers for the wastewater fund as well, since we talked about those earlier with the water fund. We do transfer to debt service from the wastewater fund, but we do also make a transfer we do collect a $5 surcharge amount that it gets transferred to a fund that we collect the special sales tax for the wastewater plant, original improvement, and then we have the $5 surcharge. So all of those dollars come over and get transferred to that fund, and then we make the debt payments from there as well. So that's a little bit different way of doing that. We do have an upcoming in the next couple of years, that sales tax will go away, the surcharge will go away. We'll have to talk a little bit more about where the remaining debt for wastewater improvements come from. So we built that into our rate study as well, but that is one transfer you will see on there right now when it says transfer to wastewater treatment plant fund. That's actually what it is. It's moving that surcharge over. We do transfer dollars to the general fund for supporting the utility, and then a portion to risk management and another portion to the community services fund. Are there other expenditures that you want to talk about at all? We do have, in every one of our utilities, we, typically have other, expenses, for paying on current lease purchases, things like that. We didn't really talk about that. We budget for, salaries and personnel in every one of our divisions where they actually employ people. Those are all expenditures that you'll see in these totals that you were given in the table here. We didn't really talk a lot about that, but those expenditures are pretty consistent across all of our funds where we have employees. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into more of our budgets down the road. If the table that we provided in the front memo shows that after our revenues and our proposed expenditures, that we would have an ending fund balance sitting at just around 1.15 million. Again, and actually it's consistent with the water fund, surprisingly, but our target fund balance is just over 1.5 million for the wastewater fund as well. So we would also like to bring back to you a recommendation on how we can meet that. We do have some large projects coming over the next 5 to 10 years for the wastewater utility as well. So we're just trying to prepare in advance for those, as well as being able to replace equipment that's been deferred from prior years, and then also playing some catch up like we talked about with in situ form and some other large projects. Some of those were listed on the front, and our staff has talked a lot about what those big dollars are. We will have some sort of a small grant match towards the base grant for that river crossing, and that will be built into our expenditures that we need to spend. That will come out of our current fund balance, and that match has to be made now or this year before we can draw those funds from the base grant to pursue that project. So we worked all of those things into our calculations here. I guess our request would be to also be able to come back to you and have a rate discussion for wastewater as well. But we're right, happy to answer any other questions you have about wastewater.
Same thing, commissioners, are we okay with giving her some guidance to come back with that? Good. Any other questions? All right. I'm scared to say, can I move on?
Yeah.
You may
Okay.
move on.
Item 4, resolution of intent to finance certain vehicles with the issuance of federally tax exempt debt.
Thank you. So this is actually another budget discussion, but it was from this year's budget that we talked about last year. When we put together all of our requests, we had a lot of vehicle and equipment purchases that we discussed. And part of that was that it was a rather lengthy list because we had been kind of laying off of making those large purchases in the previous couple of years just because of the potential impacts of the COVID impacts on our financials overall. So when we took a look at that list, and at the time, interest rates were super low, and so we talked about the potential of lease purchasing, not leasing, but lease purchasing some of our vehicles and equipment versus paying cash. And two of the vehicles that were on that list for financing with a lease purchase were two of the police department units. And both of those units have been received now. And based on the regulations for lease purchasing through tax exempt debt, you have up to 60 days after those vehicles are paid for to pass a resolution. And we would call it a reimbursement resolution, but basically it's a resolution of the intent to finance through tax exempt debt these certain vehicles or equipment. And basically it gives you the authority to, at some future point, and we will do it yet this year, but it really gives you up to 18 months to reimburse yourself through tax exempt debt, to take bids and do a lease purchase process for basically paying ourselves back. So we've paid cash for these two vehicles, but we will reimburse ourselves and then pay for those over 5 years. If this were a perfect world, we'd love to just bring it all to you at one time. We would have loved to just order everything at the beginning of the year. Everything came in at the same time, bring you one resolution, and that did not happen. And so we do have some things that are fairly segmented out. So we will probably approach the actual bidding process a little bit later in the year so we can give it an opportunity to the departments to actually get their hands on the vehicles and equipment that they really needed this year instead of rushing them to take something that they may not otherwise be as useful to them. So the total cost of these two SUVs is $106,915.60. The reimbursement resolution, well, I know it's not always favorable to round. It is a not to exceed number. So we did round that up to 107,000. It's a very simplistic resolution. It is in draft form. It was prepared by it's a resolution that was originally prepared by bond counsel. It's been sent to legal for review, but I don't anticipate that there would be any major changes to it. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Again, on the other vehicles, there's no trade value or there's no way to sell.
I believe that they keep them internally and rotate them around throughout their stuff, but would you like to speak to that?
Sure, yeah, so we rotate cars once they're on the patrol side to detectives and staff, and kind of our general guideline is about a 10 model year use or 100,000 miles. So we have old vehicles that will always be available every year to sell or be traded in. Okay. In fact, we just sold 2 on Purple Wave for pretty significant.
Good. You can sell it with equipment on it still, I might be interested.
Some equipment, but not the red and blue, sorry.
That's what I'm waiting on, okay. Answer my question, thanks.
The Rumbler?
We don't have them.
So our request would be to place this on a future agenda, regular commission agenda. If you'd like to discuss it a second time, we can bring it back to you, or however you would like to ask us to move on this.
Commissioners, how would you like to move forward?
I personally don't have an issue with moving it forward. However, is it too quick to move it forward for Wednesday if it hasn't cleared legal?
I would say there's no problem with moving it on to the one after one, the next one, the second one this month. We just want to ensure that we have it adopted before the end of this month. If if this is the direction you want to move, because that would be the end of our 60 days. We kind of held off bringing it to you, hoping that some of the other vehicles would come in, and they just have not been able to get those through yet.
So commissioners, would you like to have another discussion about it, or would you just like to move it on to an agenda? Jordan?
I would just prefer to have legal sign off on it before it hits an agenda, just in case.
So, yeah, we have,
We got plenty
So
of time.
if we were to put it on the 18th, it starts the clock ticking for legal to look and get it taken care of.
Yeah,
2 Mondays. That's I guess our intent is to possibly put it on the 18th agenda. So if we could get it back to look at it either the 9th or the 16th, we'd appreciate that.
Sounds good.
that workable?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
All right.
Commissioner. Thank you.
That's what we'll do then.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Move us on to comments by our city manager.
I don't know. Not today.
All right, comments by city commissioners. Commissioner Graves,
No comment today.
Commissioner Kaler,
None at this time.
Commissioner Clayton.
Really only comment would be I attended the League of Municipalities Conference past weekend in Manhattan. And so that was kind of an exciting opportunity to meet a bunch of other there was a bunch of mayors, so they were all.
They got nothing better to do.
Yeah, I know. I was looking around, I was like, where's my people? Normal commissioners. And so, but it was really good. You know, it's cool to learn a lot of things, and kind of the presentations were really interesting and the different things. And it's really interesting to see how everyone basically is facing the same issues. Kind of hear stories how other people are facing those and different ideas they have, from really small towns to, you know, Wichita and larger towns and stuff like that. So it was kind of great.
We are certainly not unique. Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore.
Nothing to comment.
All right, before we move on to comments by the mayor, commissioners, do you want to have a discussion about the Airport Advisory Board and the Accessibility Advisory Board? Or shall we have that conversation? Okay. So we had our 4 interviews for the Airport Advisory Board. We interviewed Kevin McCurdy, Cal Lantis, Chad Kaler, and Alicia Howard. How would the commission like to proceed? Do you want to?
I can
We
make it
don't have-
really easy for me.
Yeah, you're, yeah.
There you go. I've recused myself.
She'll recuse herself. We don't have the whiteboard up there, so we can't do the voting. But I guess if we can kind of go through each commissioner and see maybe who your top 2 are, and then narrow it down after that. So, Commissioner Clayton, how would you like to?
Thank you.
I thought all of them were obviously great candidates. Several of them that have been on before, been involved with the airport as well, were great. I thought Alicia, with being at Mac Fasteners and kind of in the aerospace industry, and obviously overseeing budgets that are very substantial, and employees and different stuff like that, and having kind of an eye outside of aviation, could be a unique perspective. And the same thing I thought with Chad and Kevin, kind of having a background in aviation, understanding a lot of that, knowing what an extending runway really means, because to me, it makes sense it would be a larger plane, but they know a lot more information on that kind of thing. I was really drawn to. Cal was the kind of same way as Alicia, not being as tied to aviation, but obviously invaluable to the community and a lot of other service. For me, I would say I really like Alicia. I thought she was be a good opportunity to get involved with the Airport Advisory Board from someone who hasn't been before, possibly in perspective. And then really with Kevin and Chad, I was kind of, tied kind of on both of them in terms of what they would have to offer, having been so experienced with the airport. I thought that they both offered really similar experience for me.
Maybe I missed it. The city manager was asking me a question. Did you give me 2?
Oh, sorry, I was long-winded.
Okay, so I didn't know if I missed it or not.
I didn't know if we were discussing or if you just want 2 names.
I haven't ran this meeting very well today, so as you can see, I'm skipping over things.
If we're just doing.
If you can just give me 2, I'm just gonna
Okay.
mark them down. That way we can narrow it down to 2 each.
Okay,
and
let's
then have
do
that
Alicia
discussion.
and Kevin.
Awesome, thank you. Commissioner Graves.
I will do, same thing. Everybody did a great job, of course. I'm going to go Chad and Cal.
Mayor Pro Tem Skidmore?
Ditto.
Okay,
I just was looking at the
Who was that?
experience side.
Chad and Cal.
Chad and Cal. Only to say that too, I think with the experience they've been on the board multiple times. And I would say this, even if this person wasn't in here in the room right now, but I think, yeah, the experience they have and in different kinds of experience outside the airport authority, but, or airport board. But, yeah, that's kind of the experience side. Although the other two were, it was not an easy decision coming to those two.
I certainly think every one of them were great candidates. I wish we had 2 more open spots that we could fill those positions with. I certainly want to, hands down, I think Chad should be on the board. Chad was very accepting to my son when he got interested in that and brought him right in and you know, he was very knowledgeable, certainly for what he does, and just very inviting. So I think that's part of the, part of what we need to show out there that we're accepting to everybody at the airport, and it's going to benefit the community once the airport certainly gets rolling. And I was torn, quite honestly. I mean, you kind of have 1A and 1B on the other 3. So I had some discussions with some other board members and thought, and asked them what they thought might be, a good person to set there. Same thing, they weren't helpful at first, quite honestly. They were kind of telling me the same thing I was already stuck with. But after a long conversation, I think we came to the agreement that Cal would be, a good addition. So that's who I would go with, would be Cal and Chad. So if the numbers are correct, we have 3 for Cal, 3 for Chad, and then 1 for Kevin, 1 for Alicia. So I would say that our consensus would be Chad and Cal to move them on to the Airport Advisory Board. Okay, we'll do that if you'd let them know, please. And as always, if the other 2 are interested in any other board that we have openings on, certainly ask them and reach out to them, give them that information, please. Thank you. On to the Accessibility Advisory Board. We have another applicant next week, so we'll have an interview next week. Commissioners, what I'd like to discuss is, in light of our conversation today, our additional interview with Emily Ham. We had a discussion last week. We made a decision, and I thought for sure we'd just move forward. I'm not in favor anymore of Mrs. Ham being on the board. And the part that I'm really torn about in this whole situation is I certainly was willing to overlook any social media interest that she had because of her answers that she gave us last week about her knowledge, the things that she's endured, just mentioning the mulch, being down there and the things that she was seeing that most of us wouldn't see. That would help with the Accessibility Advisory Board. But as I mentioned before, no matter, if it's the tree board or any board we interview for, you kind of become a spokesperson for the city of Ottawa at that point. And I'm not, as I mentioned before, when we were, vetting the commissioners, the new commissioners, Mr. Clayton and the others, I was not in favor of one of the commissioners because of his social media interest. And I'm certainly not in favor of anybody else jumping to accusations, in my opinion, about folks that they don't know and being a representative of the city of Ottawa. So I'm not in favor of Emily Ham being on the board anymore.
I think you said it very well there, Eric. And I also just think perception is reality. If somebody has a perception of something, that's how they think. And you're right. These people on the board do represent the city, and when they do those things, I'm concerned about when people get online and whether it's venting or expressing their opinion, and there's kind of a fine line between those 2 things. Sometimes it can affect. I know when we hired the bank, that's one of the things we look for is what they post online, and you have to be careful with what you say, because what you say, you are what you say. And so I agree with the mayor on this assessment.
And I think in particular, after working in the Capitol building, we also, you had to watch every word, and not that you weren't free to say what you want to say, but there could be consequences and actions because of it. And so, yeah, it definitely makes me reconsider.
Well, I would, because of Commissioner Kaler's vote last week, and I mean, unless you've changed your mind, I'm.
No, I haven't changed my mind, but I do want to, because I hope the public is watching this and I hope they hear this with complete sincerity. Citizen input is critical to what we do around this table, critical. And I never want a citizen to feel like they cannot address or contact any one of us around the table. And their conversation with me, and I don't want to make an assumption, but I'm going to assume with everyone here, is just as important as the next citizen's input. And so citizen input is critical to making a great city. And so I never want a citizen to feel like that they cannot connect with those individuals who are sitting on the city commission that are representing them.
Well, I guess in hearing the responses, I guess our consensus would be to not move Emily on to the Accessibility Advisory Board. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to fall back for a second, give the city manager a little bit of time to speak.
So commissioners, if you want to put the resolution on Wednesday's agenda, the legal department has assured me they can get that reviewed and internally approved
See that
before
quick
Wednesday.
timeline? Did you see that quick timeline? Did you see that?
That means our bill's cheap on that one, right?
That's right.
All right. Commissioners, are you, I mean, I'm assuming there's no time, no rush. But commissioners, are you?
We can always remove it from the agenda if we need to, if it becomes an issue.
Well, how would you like to move forward then, commissioners?
I'm fine with it being on Wednesday as long as legal
Same.
Yep.
approves it.
Sounds good. Yep, we'll move it on to Wednesday's agenda. That'll move us on to comments by the mayor, and I do have a comment. I've said a lot today about the negative impact of social media. I want to say something positive about social media. I know it's weird. I found one. And I meant to bring this up last week, and I apologize, but I forgot about it, and I'll talk about it today. I was at dinner about a week and a half ago with some friends, and a social media post was brought to my attention about the downtown businesses wanted to hang flags out front. I, being on the Main Street board, knew that they could. I just knew there was a restriction, a height restriction. So I know they can, but I'm not sure. Let me get an answer. Before dinner was over with, the post was shown back to me, and Commissioner Graves had been part of that communication. She had contacted our community development director, Mike Hall. Keep in mind, this dinner was at about 8:30 at night, 9 o'clock-ish. And Mike went, and found the ordinance, contacted Commissioner Graves. And Commissioner Graves, as she put it, said, let those flags fly. So it just goes to show that the commitment, and this is why I'm sorry I was passionate about my conversation earlier. I've sat around this table with not everybody at this table, but are in this room. And I believe everybody's rowing the boat in the right direction for the city of Ottawa. And if I feel that somebody's not going to be, I don't want them to be part of this team. And I think we have an absolutely great team here in the city of Ottawa. Even though you're only a couple weeks old, you're doing a great job. I believe everybody's doing the right thing, and I'm super proud to be the mayor of this town. So, Emily, thank you for reaching out to them and taking care of that. And Mike, thank you for not sleeping that night and getting that information too. So, appreciate what everybody does in this room for the city of Ottawa, and everybody that's listening that is a part of this city. So, it's a great place to be. Other than that, I have a couple announcements. May 4th, we have our regular meeting at 7 p.m. And May 9th, we have our study session at 4 p.m. Is there anything else that we'd like to discuss tonight? I will adjourn.